Okay, cool. Hello, friends who are potentially watching this in the future. I don't know. This is our first live stream. Bear with us as we set up the rest of
everything. Figure
it out. So, okay. We're gonna record. Oh.
We were recording.
Yeah, it's just gonna be record. Delete recording. Yeah, there we go. All right. Remind you sober so I have this. And then, would you like some juice?
Yeah.
It's like fancy glasses and juice. And then we can like, fancy glasses. Yeah, some green juice.
Those weren't our wine glasses that time.
They were, but they've been cleaned, I promise. I promise. But now where do I have my cleaning mix?
Oh, it's right here.
Oh, okay, perfect. Like, it's just been putting up there for a while, so just
dust it out.
Yeah. Everyone who's watching this, you're welcome.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I'm just gonna watch
this. Is
no one is watching this right now. No one knows about this. It's secret.
Okay. What kind of juice is it?
It's a green juice. It's got kale, spinach, apple, cucumber, lemon, and ginger.
Ooh, that's my vibe. Ginger. I'm here for it.
Yup.
Oh yeah, health.
Cheers.
Oh, juice is my thing.
Amen. You know my face doesn't look different today.
Okay.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Impractical Spirituality. It's me, your girl Forrest Greenwell, and I've got Amanda with me. And today we're going to be talking about sound therapy, which is the modality in the field that Amanda works in. And I'm really excited to talk about it and actually learn more about it because I'm like, I know about it, but like I don't think we've actually had a full-on
talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty stoked about it. So yeah, like what? What sound therapy is it? Let's just go for it. What is it?
I think it's well, like at its like in its most like practical form, it is the use of instruments and sound and the vibrations that sound makes to promote healing in whatever ways you may need it. So I like it because it can be very restful healing and just sort of introducing sort of, like de-stressing and relaxing your body, but you can also go deeper and access parts of yourself that you might not always be able to tap into. When I first experienced sound, I was surprised at how easy it was to kind of go into a meditative state. I had been meditating for a while, and anybody who has meditated, it can be challenging when you're trying to do the sit down in silence and just meditate. But I found the sound had a really great way of really bringing me inwards. So for me, that's really what it is about. Is it's this opportunity to connect. And there's a bunch of modalities that allow us to do that. I just feel like, when I was learning in school, they have this idea, like we talk about the Big Bang. So like the universe came from sound. So like sound is all around us, and like we make sound, like we all have instruments with our voice. And I just think sound is such an integral part of our society and our world that when we can actually be mindful and be present with it in a therapeutic setting, there's so much healing that is available to us because our body just knows, right? So that's what it is in essence. Yeah.
And what brought you into sound therapy?
I was like, I had started I think I've spoken about it a little bit before, but like I'd started my own healing journey, and sound was such an integral part of that. And music has always been a big part of my life. I'm a singer. I did musicals in school and all those things. So like music itself had always been something that was interesting to me. And this idea that I could, in a lot of ways, be a musician and be a healer at the same time, those two things really excited me. And to be honest with you, I was really like trying to find a job that wasn't the job I was currently in. And the sound therapy kind of just like fell into my lap. And I was like, okay, this, I was, and still try to like listen to the universe when it gives me signs. And, I think if I hadn't made those choices, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. So that's also the way that I look at it. And from there, like that weekend introduced me to so many different instruments that I'd never heard of, and sensations and feelings that I had never really like experienced before. Like the singing bowls, I had never experienced crystal singing bowls before. And those just put me flat on my ass that first day. Like they put me out, and I really needed that rest in a way that I didn't realize that I did. And so I just was so surprised at the different instruments' abilities to elicit different responses within me. And so my intention is always to like make people aware and present with the responses that the instruments elicit for them as well.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Something I've always been curious about with sound therapy is, so like I studied music when I was like in high school, and like before that, and like I probably had like 7 years under my belt of like very like standard, you're learning
like theory, like music theory.
Yeah. Does that play into
what I'm doing?
Therapy? Yeah.
So yes and no. Like it's not an education that I received in my training, but my brother is a music major and a composer and a conductor. So we spend a lot of time talking about those things. And I actually turned to him when I was picking my sound bowls, in terms of the notes that the sound bowls are. So they're a perfect fifth, the sound bowls that I've chosen. And that just like means that they have a beautiful resonance no matter which one I'm choosing together. And so for me, I like to bring some of that in because it's true to who I am. And I also have this feeling of those different notes can elicit different like feelings and memories and attachments for us. So I'd like to bring some of that in. Something that I have considered though is that I feel like in a lot of music you're like moving towards a beat or a rhythm, and I try to like sort of ebb and flow in and out of a rhythm and into more maybe like you get more randomness with things like chimes and things like that, which I think is what helps our brain focus, because there is so much happening that it's like all I can really focus on are these noises and keeping our minds on its toes a little bit. But for me, it's been a lot of learning about more of the music theory and how to bring that in a more, in a healing capacity, because I think there is so much there. When I was looking for my tuning forks, I was like digging around on the internet, and I found something called, I'm going to mess it up. It's like solfeggio or something like that. It's like these 3 notes that they say were like used long time ago, but that we don't have access to anymore, or something like this. I'm gonna have to look it up again, because they're like these secret notes that like the tuning forks came in, and maybe it was just like a marketing kind of thing, like, ooh, secret notes. But I think there's just like, there's something to be said about specific notes together and the response that they elicit in us and the memory that they form in us. Like you think of the Jaws, like those notes, just those couple of notes elicit fear and tension and all the right, exactly. Yeah, and like how they use really sound and music to create a mood or a vibe in art, like in movies. The music makes or breaks, I think, sometimes for me. So I don't know if I answered your question. I feel like I've gone a million miles away from it, but for me personally, music theory plays a part in it. But it's not something that I'm fully versed on. Like I don't have 7 years of like, I'm just learning how to sight read on a sheet right now. So like that's coming into it, but it wasn't something that we were specifically taught about.
That's really interesting. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm also wondering, like, outside of how that sound affects us, like how does playing music and making music also come to that?
Like for me personally,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
for the person like.
I guess for both, but like mostly about you. I find playing music so therapeutic. I studied percussion.
Oh, so yeah, banging on those drums.
Literally banging on the
Yeah.
drums. And I loved it because it was like finding. First of all, you're the leader. If you're playing with other people, like the drums create the bass line, and I was like, "Yup, that's hella me." Like I love that. But also, it's like finding rhythm in unusual places, and I feel like that is very useful for me because I work in a very unusual place in my life and in unusual fields. And it's like like I really resonate with jazz. Like jazz is one of the musics that I listen to, and I think it like comes back to the idea of like the randomness of what's going on, but also still being able to like not even find a pattern, but find connection, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah. So like for me, playing that was always really therapeutic.
Really amazing. Like just to make that resonance and be the creator of it. It's funny, my brother actually, after the last sound bath he came to, he was like, "You're a composer." He was like, "I know I was supposed to be meditating or whatever, but all I could think about was how you were composing this like soundscape for us." And ever since then, it's been like a really interesting thing for me to consider is like my contribution to people's relaxation or whatever it might be. I think that's what like my intention is, to always show up and give whatever the people need at that point, because like I don't know what you need when you show up. You even said sometimes you don't even know what you need, right? So it's like just trusting that whatever is going to come through the sound and the instruments is going to be what's right in that moment. And I think it's powerful for me to experience that, because I think in a lot of ways I actually did I'm in my level 2 for my sound therapy right now, and I had a class last night, and the teacher called us musicians, and I thought that was also like an interesting way to look at it, because I think we have this very like linear, rigid idea of like what music is. And even my brother, like, "Hey Ryan, I'm really calling you out on this," but like he learned classically, so he's very like in his mind there is that sort of like pattern and rhythm to music, or there's technique or whatever it might be. And I think that I've had to break down a lot of my sort of internalized self-consciousness about making noise and it not sounding like a beautiful melody or whatever it might be. And I think it's amazing to see people's response to the sound. And there's always a point in a sound bath when I can like feel the energy like shifting, and being a part of that energy shift is empowering. And it makes me feel good. And it's why I keep going back to it, because it's a way for me to be creative and share something with people that I think in a way like we all want to do.
And you kind of answered this, but like before you come into a session or a group setting, do you have an idea of like what you're going to be doing at all? Or are you just kind of like, okay, cool, we're going to wing it and we'll see how this goes?
It's a little bit of both, honestly. I think for the meditation portion, I try to consider like the vibe and like where I'm going to go. I tend towards like a body scan, because I like a lot of my education has been about trauma in our body, and I think we're missing a lot of that connection. And I also feel like if you come in hyped up and your body is all like, or you're disconnected, you can't go as deep as you would be able to if we spend some time there. So I focus a lot more on the meditation portion and like what I'm trying to elicit through that. I keep saying elicit. I've never said that word so much, but it's like the 5th time. Drink every time I say elicit, you guys. Forrest just drank. Yeah, I guess I should drink as well.
Yeah. I'm drinking green juice, just to clarify.
I'll be honest, actually, I was thinking about this the other day in terms of the instruments, because I play with about 6 different instruments, and I have sort of a vibe that I like to follow of like the order that I'm used to playing them in. And I'm trying to get more creative with that and play around with the placement and where I'm playing what and for how long. I think that there's a lot to be built off of that, and I want to be careful of like not getting into a rut with it. But the thing that I think is interesting is I could play the drum and then play the bowls and then play the chimes and then the ocean drum and play it in that order every single time, and you'll probably never hear the exact same thing. So I think that it's interesting how you can sort of have that rhythm, if you will, of like using the same instruments in the same order, but experience something different every time. I think for me, it's more about just setting an intention with my energy to like create a space for people, and then the sound comes from there.
You also use your voice sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, and I think I need to use it more.
Honestly, whenever you sing and I'm in a session with you, I get full body shivers. I'm like, what instrument is that? Like, I light up and like I can feel it. Maybe it's because like I also like study vocals and singing and like I like feel connected to that. Like, but it's really profound, and like also I think maybe because it's like it's human. Like,
right.
Like I don't know if that's real, but it's ethereal. Like
in my head, I'm always like interrupting the flow, but I need to. It's funny because I was like, I have a sound bath coming up on Sunday, and I'm like, maybe I should use my voice in it. But I'm just like, I definitely am. It's like I said, I'm a little bit self-conscious. It's very vulnerable to.
Yes.
It's much easier to get a sound to come out of the singing bowl than it is to like get a sound to come out of me. And I do it, and then I'll like sing for like a minute or something, and people will be like, "Were you singing? You should have done it longer." So like I think it's something that I'm like working towards and like understanding and keep kind of getting messages that it's probably time for me to do it. So, and I've always kind of thought like in a more spiritual sense, like I don't know if you've ever heard light language before, but a lot of people have been like, when you sing in that way, it feels like, because I don't use words or anything like that, it's just vocalizing, right? And the first time I heard sound like that was my teacher, and I've never met a person that is like, you're a fairy. Like, you are a fairy and it's confirmed, and I'm seeing a fairy in real life. But she sang for Cirque du Soleil and was like, is this like beautiful little French woman, and she just came in and like let it rip and like didn't like no words. And that's what she was saying, is that again, kind of what I was saying was like, we've got this attachment and this rigidity with music of like, she was like, I would be performing these songs and singing these lyrics, but really feel like I was never truly singing because I was just like going through the motions and like trying to hit these notes that other people had created for me. And vocalization is just about using our voice, and you don't have to be a quote unquote like technically able singer to make sound. And I think that I'm working out of that, in that I have been a little bit more classically trained in my voice, and so to just kind of like let it go and see what flows is I think really important. But in a one-on-one session, it's also about getting the person that I'm treating to also vocalize, because there is a lot locked up in our throats and our voices, and I think a lot of people toning is really powerful, because again, you don't have to have the words. And I think sometimes we get caught up in like not having the right words or not quote unquote being a good singer or whatever it might be. So we lock it down and we don't sound at all and vocalize. And I think it's a super important part of the practice. Like, you don't need to buy any fancy instruments or have any sort of thing like that. It literally is just about sounding out a syllable, and that can be immensely healing.
Yeah, that was actually like part of my next question was like, should people be singing more? Because like, yeah, I do think that like even in the work that I do, throat chakra blocked as fuck. Blocked. Yeah. And people have such a hard time saying what they want and vocalizing their needs, and like I'm not outside of that.
No, me neither.
Something that I noticed was like, not that I noticed, actually my partner noticed that I sing when I'm happy. Like when I'm in a good place, he's like, oh, there she is. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, you're singing. I'm like, oh, okay. And there's something to be said about that. And it was also interesting that you brought up light language, because when I was a kid, I used to sing all the time, and not in any language. I called it French because that was the only language that I knew. I knew that it wasn't English, it just wasn't that thing. And I would sing in this language all the fucking time. And like when I was a kid, I was the witchiest I've ever been, like even more than now. Literally, like there's a time I was with my grandmother, and I would like to say that my grandmother is like legally blind. Like she doesn't have a peripheral vision. So we were chilling at their house. I was going to the basement, and I was like, I can fly, and I literally jumped down the stairs. I jumped down the stairs, but I was fine. I made it to the bottom,
oh my
like
God.
completely fine. And she was just like, excuse me, and like of course I only have like my like like partially able to see grandmother, who's like my witness for like my like 5-year-old ass
ability to like I flew.
Like yeah, but she's like, no, you literally did that. Like you floated up the stairs, and I was singing while I was doing it, but then I tried to push my brother down the stairs. So I was like, you can fly too. That did not work. He couldn't fly. But I always thought that was like an interesting connection, and like I was always talking to fairies, and like, you know, and I was like grounded as fuck until I was like, I don't know, like 9 years old, like really had that like energy around me. And like also I was always in nature and like always had access to those things. And so I feel like I want to sing the most and like be the most vocal when I'm like in that like natural state, or like I'm in my natural state. Yeah. And I guess like I don't know if you have the answer to this, but like I'm curious if like other people feel that way, or like if we like collectively have like blocked throat chakra, or if there's different like sounds that people make. There was just this thing I was reading, and it was like basically just about like how it is that different people use different parts of their bodies, and it was like, yeah, like part of this whole like kind of like looking at the yang in the body, and mine was like, oh, you're vocal, like you don't even have to say words in order to get what you want, like you will like grunt and sigh, and like those are your answers, so listen to those before you use your brain to make words. And I was like, ooh. And I started doing it, and my boyfriend has noticed that too. He's like, oh, you don't want to do that? I'm like, I didn't say that. He's like, you didn't have to say that, you said it with your
well, that's the thing, right? Is like we communicate in so many ways other than vocalizing, but it's almost like it's hard to vocalize what we need. And I think from like a therapeutic standpoint, like in our biology, it's good for us to sing. So I'm gonna get a little technical, nerd out. So the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in our body, and it connects our brain to our body. So the nerve runs down our necks and connects all of our organs to our brain. So it's like our mind-body connection. Yeah, shivers. So there's something called vagal tone, basically. So based on if you have like a healthy vagal tone, or like I shouldn't say healthy or unhealthy, but like a slow or a fast vagal tone, or whatever it might be, you might experience like lethargy or excitability, or just feeling better or feeling worse kind of thing. So a way to tone your vagus nerve is through singing. And so when I was beginning my own like healing journey, like doing trauma work, that's when I joined the choir. And it has been immensely healing to just use my voice and to sing and to do it in a group. I think there's something so powerful about sounding and singing with a group of people. But I do it in my car, honestly, and it can be as simple as just like sounding on an ah for an extended period of time. And like what you're trying to do is introduce vibration in your throat and in your body, and that helps to tone your vagus nerve, which helps to make you feel better. So when the vagus nerve, you know, our nervous system is either really, in a simple term, fight or flight, or rest and digest, right? And so the vibration of the sound and of your voice talking helps to get you to a place of rest and digest and move out of that sort of fight or flight, which I think a lot of us are in a lot of the time. We live in a pretty stressful world, especially in this year, like, and with our phones, I think we're kind of like scrolling into fight or flight a lot of the time, which can also be freeze, like fight, flight, or freeze. So if you feel immobile, that's also like a sympathetic nervous state. Sorry, I'm going like deep into it.
No, this is good.
But that's where my mind goes with the sound, and I think that's why like I did an event, like 2 events throughout quarantine, like about resting. And I think that that's like a lot of what the sound is able to get us into, and why I try to do like the body scans and things like that, because our nervous systems, like we talk a lot about the systems outside of ourselves that impact us, but what about the systems within us? And I think like the nervous system is a big system that we're learning so much more about now, and people are becoming educated. And in a lot of the trauma education I've done, like a lot of it is about like nervous system health. And I think that's where something as simple as vocalization can be a really great tool for promoting self-care and better mental health, I think.
I totally agree with that. I'll talk a little bit more about the vagus nerve, because I think that literally everyone needs to know about the vagus nerve. I don't know a lot about it, but my basic understanding of it is that it was developed to help us in like an evolutionary way. It was like we used to not live in big cities where there was noise everywhere, and like you would be like in your fucking cave in the forest, and you'd hear a rustling, and you'd be like, oh, that is the sound of a jaguar, and like, you know, and that turns you on. And then now we live in a world where there's always noise, we're always stimulated. So even if you have like you're chilling in your life, like there's not really a whole lot going on, like that's how I feel right now. I'm like, everything is good, but I still feel stressed. And I'm like, oh, because I live in a city. Okay. And like something that I have been like noticing that I do a lot, especially when I'm going really deep into meditation, and specifically when I'm in the bath. I don't know if it's because I'm in the bathroom or because I feel connected to water, but during my meditations, I find that like I do this like and like I like work my way up, and it's almost like there's different sounds from different chakras, and like once I get to like the top of that, like it gets really high pitched, and like sometimes my vocal cords can't reach there, and like I actually feel blocked, like I can't like break through and connect everything. And like that's also why I listen to jazz a lot, because like it literally is signaling to my brain like, hey, you can chill out, it's okay, don't worry, homie, you're good. And yeah, like do you have anything that people can do in like their day-to-day lives to kind of like become attuned to that, and like more info on like why this is super fucking important and why we don't all know about the vagus nerve, because it's crazy, it's so crazy.
I feel like honestly right now I hate to be like one of those people, but I'm like, we need to do a what is the vagus nerve episode because it is so important. But I'd say like 100%. Like, so just like right off the bat, it's like the vagus nerve plays into like our social engagement system. So what we were talking about earlier was communication, and how communication is more than just verbalization. Our nervous system is also reading how your facial expressions and what your facial muscles are doing, and the tone of your voice and the language of your body, and so it's trying to navigate, is this a safe person for me? And I think what you said about living in a city is really important, because the more I learned about the nervous system, I'm like, oh, this is a system that is ancient, that was like built within us to protect us from when we were literally being threatened by like wild animals, and like we couldn't eat potentially, and all those things.
As you can literally hear the sirens outside.
We'll just let it go. Yeah. So we live. I have always felt like we should be living in a world where we don't have to be in those survival instincts anymore. Like we have access to, safety in a way that we haven't before. But I think without that knowledge of, I have a nervous system inside of me that is meant to, like, our bodies love us. Our bodies and all of its systems within it are there to protect us and to keep us alive, right? So when our body is noticing a threat or confusing something for a threat, that is a normal response. And like our body's actually doing what it's meant to do. So it's kind of like, how can you, and that was a lot of what I learned in like my trauma education, is that when we have trauma and experience trauma, it's actually that after the threat has gone, our brain continues to see things as threats, and our nervous system recognizes those things as threats. And anyways, like I said, it's a whole long ass episode that we can really dive into, because I have a ton of information. But I think something to start considering for your vagus nerve is 3 things. Cold therapy. So anything that's going to like get water on your face and on your neck is going to help to like sort of snap you back into the moment. So for a long time, I was going to the ocean every week and like getting into the ocean in like March, and it was really good. It was really amazing. It like the cold like touches parts of your body that you don't even really notice are there. It, like wakens you up. You can do it in the shower, like 30 seconds at the end of a shower. So cold therapy, vocalizing. I guess vocalizing and singing, but those are the 3 things that I would say. So like, just like I said, toning a simple ah, or there are sounds that go with the different chakras, if that's what you're into. And then singing. So again, singing in the car, singing with people, singing in a choir, all of those kinds of things are going to help to physically tone your vagus nerve. But mostly just put you in a place where you are feeling more rested, where you're feeling more rested and safe, rather than feeling like you're in survival or under threat. Does that make sense? Okay.
Another question I have, and it's like, I guess about like sounds that are unpleasant, like screaming, for example. But like a lot of people who I find like have a lot of like anger or pent up energy really I love like really abrasive music. For me, it gives me anxiety. I can't listen to it and not feel like ah. But I feel like for some people, it like I don't want to say it relaxes them because I don't think that's the vibe, but like it gives them some kind of release. And like, what? Do you have any information about that, or what's your thoughts? On
my thought initially is that it's like it meets them on the level that they are. Right?
Yeah,
it's like matching their energy, and it's like because I get overstimulated. I find like loud voices, loud music, if a lot of things are happening at once, it can kind of, it affects me. But I think for some people, like that kind of music, it's like, it matches the energy like inside of them. They're like, yes, my rage on the outside or whatever it might be. It's like, it just puts them in that space that maybe jazz puts you in. Right? Like, I think it's different strokes for different folks, really.
Yeah, like being able to like be like, okay, this is what I need to like. Would you like consider that like a release, like being able to externalize that? Okay, cool.
That's how I would see it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Well, I think it's important because like like not a lot of sound is or not. I shouldn't say not a lot, but there are sounds that are pleasant for some people and sounds that are really unpleasant for some people. Like some people really hate jazz because of the randomness. They can't do it. It's not.
It's irritating.
It's irritating to them. So like more like man-made sounds that are more rhythmic work better for them. I shouldn't say that jazz is rhythmic. It is rhythmic, but like like it's
I get what
more pattern.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. I haven't heard too much about that. That's interesting though. I'm gonna think about that a little bit more because I think it's like it's interesting. Like I use an ocean drum in my practice, and I have a friend who really doesn't like it, and a lot of people love it. They're like, oh, it's so soothing, but some like, and it's I think it honestly depends on the day. Like you could show up to one and be like, those samples are exactly what I need, and then another day you could be like, I can't listen to that for another second. I think it's just about the mood and the mindset that you show up in and what you need in that moment, right? Like we talk a lot about how unique everybody is. And so I feel like it's just whatever feels like it's connecting at that time.
I like that a lot.
Like maybe one day you'll want to like rock out to some screamo and it'll make you feel good.
Maybe.
Like one, like you know what I mean? Like the one time, that one song, you're just like, oh yes.
No,
I get it for this moment. Yeah.
I love like that song.
When I was like 15, I was like,
yeah. Jeremy still listens to it. Sometimes I'm like, I should get fucking down with this. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, there is like a very like almost like that part of me that's like angry at my inability to focus like comes out there, and I'm like, okay, fuck yeah, like I like, get into it and like feels really good. And then other times I'm like, no,
gentle.
I can't.
Be gentle.
Just be gentle. Yeah. I also find that during different seasons I need different sounds. Like I think this is like a pretty common thing. People have like their fall playlist and their summer playlist and all that, but like I feel it. And actually, so like I don't know if you guys use Spotify, but Spotify, your Discover Weekly, it has like an algorithm basically that's just like, yo, this is music that you like and that you listen to. And I have noticed that over the years, I've been using Spotify for like 7 or 8 years now, like a decent amount of time, and it changes for the seasons. My Discover Weekly, even if my actual listening hasn't changed, it's like, okay, bitch, it's autumn. We got some good for you.
It's winter. We got a jam for you.
Yeah. And like it recognizes, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, this is exactly what I need, and it's like that reminder. Or with I guess certain sounds, like how we know that like smell is one of the strongest associations with memory, but I think that sound is really strong as well. Like I would say that like in my experience, sound and smell are the two strongest.
Yeah, I would agree. 100%.
Because they're not like here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, it's even something like I was at a friend's birthday party this weekend and we were listening to like old songs and the lyrics that live in your brain without you even realizing it. Right? Yeah. You're like, oh, I haven't heard this song in 15 years, but I know every word and I know every beat and I could probably remember the dance from the music video kind of thing. So like there is that association for sure with sound. I think too what I haven't given myself the opportunity to really focus on yet, and what I like am wanting to do with my one-on-one sessions is music, especially, and sound is emotional. And I think that that's what, when we talk about memory, what we're actually recalling is the feeling of that moment.
Yes.
Right? So the sound elicits a connection to a feeling. And I think that, yeah, like the sound, and like in a sound session, it's an opportunity for you to be present with your emotions. And I think for some people that can be a little bit intimidating or scary or like not my vibe, but I really want to approach my work from a place of like, how can I introduce you to your feelings if you're somebody who isn't often going there or hasn't really been taught how to manage that. I think, I surround myself with a lot of people who are truly in tune with their feelings. And like, I've done a lot of work to become comfortable and in relationship to the variety of feelings that I experience every day. But I think there are a lot of people who aren't, and who are maybe afraid or unsure or curious, but don't know how to approach it. And I really want my work to be a place for people to explore and learn that. And I think, I was doing my chart in my birth chart, and it's like, that's who I am, like that person that's connected to those feelings and wants to create a space for people to do that in a way that is non-judgmental and like safe. That's like a lot of what this work is about. Like the sound is beautiful and it's a tool, but it's a doorway more than anything, right? I think that you probably feel that with the cards too. Like the cards are a tool and a doorway to the invisible world.
Yeah.
That's all around us.
The tools give me the ability to tell people what it is I'm already feeling from them.
Exactly.
I can't just go and be like, oh,
by the way,
you're going through some stuff, It's more of like, okay, yeah,
this is the King of Cups, and
yeah, exactly, exactly. It's that like invitation. And something else that comes to mind is like accessibility. So like, how does music affect people who are deaf? Because it's still vibrations. They're still able to feel that experience. I know that you have some tuning forks and you can actually put it on and like you can feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any knowledge or experience behind that? I don't mean to like put you on the spot.
No, it's so interesting that you asked that, because last night someone else actually asked that question in class, and I was like, that's an interesting like thing to consider, right? So I think if someone's truly deaf, they won't be able to hear the sound. But I think it's kind of like when you stand in front of a speaker at a concert and you feel that vibration, right? So I think what the teacher kind of explained, and it's like you said, is that sort of on body vibration is going to be what truly makes it impact for them. And I haven't had the pleasure to work with anybody who is deaf, but I absolutely would. And I think in that situation, it's more about finding what works for them. And I think I shy away from the word vibration because it's so loaded and we talk about it so much. But in this capacity, like the sound waves, so the vibrations are a big part of what is healing, right? I speak about it all the time, but we hold a lot of tension in our body, and it's about breaking up that tension. And I think that like the drum is super vibrational. The bowls are super vibrational. You can play bowls on people if that feels good for them. My bowls are a little bit big for that, so I'm like looking into getting some that I can actually play on body, so that it's a somatic experience as well. And I think that's where people who have challenging times hearing, that's more of what it would be for them, is a somatic experience, which it would be for anybody, but they're also getting that auditory experience that someone who's hard of hearing wouldn't have access to. But it's really fun that you brought that up.
This could probably be covered in the vagus nerve episode, but I'm really curious, like, how does the vagus nerve work in someone who's deaf? Like, what does that connection do?
I have no idea.
Okay, cool.
I'm gonna look that up though.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I have no idea, but I'm gonna remember that. And yeah, that's interesting. I feel like it would work in the same way, right? Because they're like I said, social engagement. They're visually able to get those cues. But that's an interesting question. I'm gonna dig a little deeper into that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sounds so cool.
It is so cool, and the more that I like learn about it, and the more that I practice it, and the more that I take it seriously, I see that it actually does have such a place in somebody's like, I guess, wellness routine. In that, I think that there's not a lot of modalities where you go and get body work and nobody touches you. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I see it. It's like, it is in a way body work, but it's body work that you're doing on yourself.
Yes.
And you allow the sound to move through you, and Well, I don't know, like, not to put you on the spot, but like you've experienced the sound. So like what has that experience been like for you?
That's a great question. And I've been thinking a lot about that actually because I feel like I just sometimes I get overstimulated by it, honestly. Sometimes I'm like, oh my god, there's so much going on and I love it. And then my brain is like, dun, 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 let's go into story mode. And like last Sunday we were at New Sound Bath, my partner and I, and he was like, I had the best time ever. And I was like, yeah, me too. And he was like, no, like I had like an insane visual experience and like told me about it. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And like I wasn't jealous, but I was like, I did not get there, and it's not because like it's not amazing. It's because like I don't even know. I don't even have a reason for it. It's just like maybe even just the energy of people around me or being in a space where I am used to facilitating and being turned on. I was like, oh, I have to turn this off right now. And so like it's interesting to think about like not only sound but the environment that we're in for sound, for all of that. But yeah, I find that also like even when my brain is doing stuff, like I come out feeling more relaxed. Like my body is like, oh, we've done work. Even though you weren't paying attention to that work,
Right.
we've been there
Right.
doing that.
Right.
And then there's also times where it's like really, really, really emotional. Actually, when we were doing our series online during isolation, that was I think those are the times I had the most profound impact because I was like in a room by myself, being able to listen to it and like getting immersed in it. And I think that's something important to note too, that like like environment does impact things for different people. For some people, like being on the roof of a building and like being surrounded by life and like listening to that is really, really soothing. And like it is soothing for me. But I've just been noticing like, oh fuck, like I think just because I work with people in a healing setting, like I work through
it's harder for people who are healers themselves
to
receive healing and to like turn that off. I've noticed it, or they don't participate in other like modalities because I don't know, that's something that I've noticed is that there's just once you kind of step into that role, there seems to be like a, do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I do. I totally do. And I see it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's also why I value like working with so many different people because I'm like, I can't get stuck in my tarot. I can't get stuck in what it is that I know. I have to go and experience these things. My friend did a Reiki session on me and she was feeling so much stuff and like, it was really interesting because I was like, whoa, like I can feel some of what you're doing, but like I also am like having such a hard time turning off my analytical brain and like being present. And it's actually one of the only things that or not one of the only things, one of the things I find that is the most profound for me is acupuncture. And I think it's because it's like literally touching those places and like, hi, like you feel this, you're in your body now. And
I haven't had it done and I'm very interested.
It's so good. And like I am not a person who's in my body very often. So I think that's also why it resonates with me so much. And also why I venture to things that don't bring me in my body because it's very comfortable.
So like I like it here.
Yeah. So like I love saying like I have to be in a place where I can really like sink into it. But it's also something I'm working on because I'm realizing like, oh, but like I do have the capacity to go there. So what is it that stops me from getting there? And when we were at the sound bath on the roof, like in my brain I was like, we had like rolled up the blanket and put it under our knees because Jeremy was really hot, but I was like, I actually want this on me. And it was one of those things where I was like, man, like I am now not allowing myself to access this fully because I like didn't set myself up in the way that I needed to for. And I think that's important too, is like recognizing what it is that you need to make yourself comfortable and available, because we're so used to distracting ourselves and not being available that it's really easy to compromise those things. But like that compromise like also compromises your experience. So like there's things that like I'm learning about all of it too. But at the same time I'm also just like, it's fucking wonderful. Like, yeah, and I think that's also maybe part of why like your voice resonates so much, because it like is that part of me that I like can recognize, connect the most to. I'm like, oh, there's the humanity in all of it, okay, and like that is not that there's not humanity, but like you know what I mean. It's just like it like that is really, really, really activating for me. That is the moment where I'm like,
I'm gonna sing for you on Sunday.
Okay, thank you.
We're gonna make it happen. I think it's like interesting too to consider that, right? It's like for somebody that may not feel comfortable coming in a group setting, then that's what a one-on-one session is for, right? So that you can feel safe to relax and let go, or whatever it might be, or there's less sensory energies and, like you said, from other people. I think that's why it's such an amazing tool, that it can be used in a group setting, but can also be for something that's just for you. And I always felt like I use Reiki as well, and that's a hands-on experience for me. Like, I do Reiki with my hands on the person, and I think that that's a really good way to also get people in their bodies. Is, like you said, even with the needles, like, it is just about something having like physical touch.
Yeah.
To be like, that's your elbow. Do you feel it, kind of thing? And so I think like the Reiki and the sound together is like a very beautiful combination that I am excited to offer people, and I just think it's like, I would want to get that session personally, not to be like, but I'm like, that sounds dope to me. So I'm like, that's what I'm trying to bring into my work, is like creating a safe space for people who might have a challenge slowing down or stopping their minds or their bodies, and getting in tune with that, basically.
Yeah. And it's also why I meditate with water, because I'm like submerged in something, and there's also like a place for my energy to go. And I'm gonna bring crystals with me on Sunday, and like have physical things to like hold, and like as that like reminder, like, hi, you're here, like you wear clothes every day, so that's not really a helpful reminder for you. Like, you know, like and just figure out ways that makes it work. And yeah, like also like a reminder to people that, like, you know, not everything is gonna work in a group setting for you. Like, I feel
100%
everything from everyone, and it's hard to turn that off, especially like no shade, Jeremy, I love you so much, but like going to things with him, I'm like, oh, I'm
aware of you.
I'm aware of you. Yeah, like there's a point when we were meditating and our hands were touching, and we actually had to move them away, because I was like, I can't be a part of your experience right now. Like, I can't touch you. Get away from me.
Right.
Please.
Yeah.
Please, I love you.
Yeah.
But no, I can't do it. And just like, you know, like recognizing that, like, you know, recognizing what it is that you need, what it is that like is going to activate you in a way that takes you out of the experience, what's going to activate you in a way that brings you into the experience, and figuring out what works. Yeah.
I feel like it's one of those things that you really have to experience.
Yes.
100%. Like, you have to like let yourself try it before you can even have an idea of what it truly is, you know? Like, exactly. I think for a long time I wouldn't have really understood what sound therapy was until I could physically have experienced it myself. And then once I did it, I had similar experiences like Jeremy. Like, it was very colorful and like somatic tingling and like feeling the energy move in my body, where I had other people in the same group that were like, yeah, I blasted off to space, and I saw this thing and this thing and this thing, and for a long time I was like, oh, I want to see a dragon or whatever. But like, that experience, like whatever it might be, is powerful in and of itself, and it really is about experiencing it. I think at the end of the day, it's true. Yeah, it's truly about getting yourself in the space to receive the sound. For me, at least. Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah, and also what receiving looks like for you. Like, Jeremy's a very visual person, so he's visually activated. Like, I feel like for me, I get more like words and feelings and little blips and like colors, like a lot of like synesthetic experiences.
Kind of
yeah, where I'm like, oh, different senses are connecting, or I'll like hear a sound and I'm like, I'm smelling something that's not actually here right now. Okay, like, you know, and kind of trying to not even like being like, I need to be present in this, but like experiencing it, like watching it happen. Yeah.
Well, that's the whole thing, right? Is like being the awareness of the experience rather than trying to like attach to it.
Yeah.
I think that's like when we talk about meditation and mindfulness and the sound, that's really what you're trying to do, right? Is like watch the thought rather than be the thought. And then I think that's, where you tap into, like, not to sound contrived, but like a peace within yourself, when you can really detach from the expectations you might have had of the experience, or the thoughts that you're having, or the sensations you are or aren't having. You know what I mean? Like, when you can truly be present with those and see that they're separate from you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, oh, so if I'm not those thoughts, then I'm just the observer of them. And there's a little bit less attachment to it. And so that's always my goal, is to let people see that like you're in control of that experience in a lot of ways, if you can be observational and non-judgmental.
Yes.
And compassionate. like that's a lot of what my work is rooted in, is like having compassion for yourself and for others, and not judging yourself, because I feel like we all just like judge ourselves so harshly, harsher than we would ever judge anybody else. But that self-judgment transfers to judgment to others.
Yeah, because we're like, this is normal and okay. If I judge myself, then like it's totally cool that I'm judging another person, because they're probably judging me because I'm just like, it's like this like whole
like feedback loop. Exactly.
Yeah.
So like the sound is like any healing modality. It gives you what you need, and you get from it what you like allow it to give you, basically.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's just one of those things that I feel like everybody needs to experience. And like I think as we move forward in the world and things are changing, it's going to be just like tarot and all of those other things, like a part of how we connect with ourselves. In a world that kind of like wants us to not.
Yeah. No, the world's like, oh, if you're just disassociated, then we can.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Want.
Yeah, just disassociate a little longer.
Just be a little puppet. It's great.
Yeah, so come to my sound bath and we'll cut the puppet strings and it'll be
on Sunday.
Actually, that one's no good, but it's sold out. But there'll be more.
Oh, great. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I like that. Also, Amanda will be doing some sessions here, so if you are like, oh, I'm the person who gets overwhelmed in groups, like one-on-ones maybe, it's
the way to do it.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at too. Like I'm like, oh, I need focused attention, and that's
what I was gonna say. Is like, okay, so we need to do a one-on-one session.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
Yeah,
okay.
I need focused attention.
Yeah,
and I need it to be curated to what I need. But
I like that.
It's true,
yeah.
And I think that recognizing it for yourself too is like, like, yeah, maybe every once in a while going to things and learning from those experiences can be really beneficial. And also maybe you're the person who's like, I really need to invest in just figuring out what it means just for me. Especially if you're a person who's really busy with other people.
That's a good way to, for sure.
Yeah.
So I'd say if you have any questions about anything that we talked about today, reach out to me.
Yeah.
Reach out to Fo and she can reach out to me, kind of thing. Like,
around.
Yeah. I'm so happy that we got to talk a little bit about my work today. And I'm stoked on this vagus nerve episode.
Okay, me too, because also we know what we're going to talk about next.
Yeah,
literally this morning we were like, what are we doing? I was like,
sounds good to me.
Yeah,
let's get it done. So I'm stoked on that. I think there's a lot of information that people need, and that, I have to give.
I love that.
So
excellent. Well, thanks for listening, y'all.
Yeah, for real.
As always, you can find us on the internet at Fiends_co, at Amanda Baiocco, at The Forest Eden. We will link all of this for you because we are kind humans and we know that everyone's a little bit lazy. That's okay. And I'm not calling you out, I'm calling myself out, just so y'all know.
It's me.
This is me. It's
I'm
me.
lazy.
It's me. I'm projecting on all of you. But yeah, thanks for listening. If you have any questions, let us know. If there's anything you want to know about, let us know. I hope you enjoy your day. I hope that you go and think about what sounds you listen to in your day and like how that affects you, and maybe even try listening to something that you don't usually listen to. Yeah. Also on Amanda's website, she has a recording of a sound bath. Highly would recommend going and checking that out. If you're like, okay, but what is it? Go there. Go check it out. Yes. We'll link that in the bio too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Bye. Great.
Was that good?
That was awesome.
Did I sound dumb?
No, you sounded fucking awesome. You're so
Thank
smart.
you.
You know so many things.
Get me up, baby. You're so smart. You know so much. You know all the things.
You know everything.
You know everything. What time is it?
Oh, we should turn this off. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm just going to see am I dumb?